Now I'd like to turn it over to you and see if you have any questions for our great panel here. I'd invite you to come up to the microphones right here.
Come on, wake up.
Well, since you are all consummate, flawless leaders, this is going to be anecdotal. But could you give us an example of when you were wrong? And when, in particular, you were, it was pointed out by a subordinate, and how you went about dealing with it and how you corrected course. Anecdotally, of course.
Wow, who wants to start that?
Well, I could just speak to the time when I was wrong, telling my teammates about what they had done wrong, which caused, for one of my teammates, she didn't speak to me for a year. So that was very difficult, but at the same time, I had to go back and create that same form where I could correct myself and really show that, that type of leadership and what I chose to say wasn't really the right way to do that. That wasn't the right way to handle that. And from that, I've caused, friction that, with friction on a team, it's really difficult for everyone to be for us to be successful. And I think by going back and fixing that one mended the relationship, which ended up obviously was more of an interpersonal relationship with a teammate of mine. But I think for the whole group, it really helped ease the tension. So sometimes I think wherever you make that mistake, maybe you have to go back to that place and really rectify it and be the bigger person as the leader to say, hey, that was wrong, that wasn't the proper approach. And that really worked for me and my team at that time.
I had a situation where at one of our project go-lives, this is going way back, I guess about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was our first go-live. So, and our operations are very focused at nighttime. So our pick, packing, and shipping operations, and if we don't get the cases out the door and to our customers, and our revenue stops generating and people start calling, they don't like it when that happens. So pricing is very complex in our business. I'm sure many of you face the same challenges with your business, but our configuration in SAP was not correct. So as we invoiced throughout the night, as we closed our trucks, the pricing was incorrect. And I got the call about 2 o'clock in the morning, and most of our trucks leave in this particular business unit around 6 in the morning. So I had this great idea. I said, we're going to bring the whole team back in at 3 in the morning. We're all going to manually change prices on the invoices, and we're going to make everything right because it's the first day of go live. And so, to their credit, no one on the team questioned it. They all came back in. We all tried and failed miserably at changing invoices and missed time windows and deliveries, and we finally got all the trucks out about 11 o'clock in the morning. And no one said anything, I was waiting, and about after I went back and got some sleep and I came back to the office in the distribution center, I pulled the team together. I said, well, that was a terrible decision on my part. And it was my decision, and it was the wrong decision. But I think it helped them understand that, we're all trying to do the right thing. We're all trying to do the best thing. And sometimes you make those decisions under pressure in the heat of the moment, and they're wrong. The good news for us was the truck still got out. Our customers still got their product. It just happened to be a few hours later. And so they saw that, making the wrong decision sometimes also doesn't kill you, right? And but that was a really bad decision. So.
They don't make any bad decisions. Bridgette never makes a bad decision. Next? Anyone else?
We did get one through our Twitter direct message. But
I think Cecilia has a question over here.
Come up to the mic. So I'm sure that all of your strategies apply to working with a peer as well as a team member, but have you ever had a situation where you were kind of removed and it was another manager's team member who was causing a conflict with yours, with someone on your team, and how did you deal with that when it's not, the person causing the problem is not directly under your influence? Thanks.
That's an interesting question. I referenced earlier that I've had the good fortune to work with several people, several organizations in a row. And one individual in particular who I think is just brilliant and I think has an incredible career, struggled to transition from point of control to point of influence. And the only thing I would say is that I think you always have influence. I think it's a matter of how you use it. You know, the problem is that a lot of us want to manage something with more control than influence will allow for. And so when you have a situation and someone is in a different division or even a different company or a partner, clearly the reach is somehow over the fence. And you have to be able to create influence. And often influence is sparked by collaboration and some type of ability to compromise. And that means you have to listen enough to understand what's important to that person. So you end up in this entire effort to form a relationship that sometimes is difficult to do because you don't like what the other person is doing. You know, you have some distaste for it, or you think that, you know, you have some judgment in your mind about what this person or that group is doing. And as it relates to this employee that I was mentioning to you, we worked a lot. In fact, I took responsibility away from a reporting perspective that he desperately needed to be successful. I said, you're going to have to learn how to do this by influence, because they don't report to you anymore, but you have to be able to get certain things achieved with this group in order to hit your goals. We drank a lot more red wine that year, mostly because I got a lot of phone calls about this isn't happening. This is where these people are going wrong. And I learned perhaps more in the process than he did, quite frankly. But the one big takeaway I can tell you is that influence is more possible than you'll ever believe. But you have to stop and listen, and you have to genuinely be interested in improvement, not in being right. If your interest is in being right, then you're just doing the same thing that they're doing. You just have a different perspective, right? And so I would just encourage people to consider how you can constantly grow your influence and how you can grow your brand, if you will, as somebody that can be trusted and listened to, so that when there's a divide, you have the chance to be somewhat of an ambassador, if you will, to be able to step in. I think people will allow you to do that if they trust you.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's interesting at a company like SAP, you can imagine we're a fairly sizable organization. There's a joke that oftentimes, you know, if there aren't 3 people doing the same thing you're trying to do, you're probably not doing the right thing. But in all seriousness, I think, you know, as a leader inside SAP, it's as much about understanding that kind of landscape around you as much as it is understanding what's going on within your own team and being kind of plugged into and understanding, you know, if they're, for example, HANA does not fall under my marketing control, but you can imagine HANA has a huge analytics story. So it's very important for me and the success of the BI team to make sure that we're included in those conversations. And oftentimes that influence needs to be a two-way street. It's not just about, hey, HANA, you have to help out analytics, and obviously they do, but it's as much, hey, we have 50,000 customers. We have big events. You know, how can we work together to amplify both sets of messages? And I think it's finding that common ground, a commonality between you and the person or the groups that you're trying to influence, and then being able to come to a common understanding of how you're going to go about it. Now, there are cases where edicts come down that just say it must be done like this, and it's being able to understand what are the hard tasks that can't be moved versus the ones where we can find commonality and work together, and really having an understanding of where that person is coming from, both organizationally, what their own personal motivation is, and then where is their flexibility versus not in terms of being able to help influence that situation.
You know, there's one more thing I'll share with you as it relates to that question. I was talking with an executive at Dell not too long ago, and she was sharing the story about how she grew in her career. It's a fascinating story. She's an incredible executive and has some incredible accomplishments, not just with Dell, but the company she was with before that. And she was struggling with a colleague, basically. They both had X amount of budget. They both had X amount of requirements, and it was their job to get the mind share of the products team to take all of that to market. If they didn't get that mind share, they didn't look too successful. And as they continued to battle back and forth, she had this epiphany that she had capacity to offer, but her product wasn't getting the mind share of the product directors. And she decided it was best for the company if that didn't change, because she believed that the best thing for Dell was for this colleague's product to have more time to properly develop so that it could be more flawless once it went to market. So she went into her leadership and said, I have this plan where I have this capacity, and I think we should put it on this person's team. You can imagine the surprise from the leadership because they're used to this ongoing battle. It turns out that they did in fact do that, and she ended up taking over the entire group because she had shown herself to be such a team player that the leadership trusted her even more. And I thought it was just a great example of how somebody took what could have been a bit of a dogfight kind of off to the side and turned it into a real win, not only for themselves, but for their entire company. And that's not an easy thing to do. She really did think first about what the goal was, and she did something that's very hard for a lot of us to think about. She just believed if I do the right thing, good things will happen. And how cool is that? Because that doesn't happen all the time.
Probably have time for one more question.
In an environment where you have a team that's been fairly successful, how do you challenge them to continue to innovate and ensure that they don't become complacent?
That's a good question.
Well, I think that it usually comes down to what have you done for me lately. So in order to really be successful, you have to stay competitive, and I think it's important to really keep that fire lit up under, whatever team that you're working for, is that you have to always continue to strive to get better. There's always something that you can find that where you went wrong or you made some mistakes along the way. And I think it's important for that leader to make sure that their team does not get complacent, continue to challenge them in different ways that maybe they had not been challenged, previously. And then to continue to believe that, there's always some group they're right there. We have to watch out for them. So when you really highlight what the other competition is, I think that's important too, just so that your team does not get complacent based on what they've done in the past. Because I always feel like even when you win one championship or one gold medal, whatever I've won, the next day it's over. It's in the past. And so you got to go right back to the beginning, sort of, to regroup and to get better and find different ways to challenge yourself. And that's really key, I think, to continue to be innovative and to stay on top.
If you're going to do that in team setting, one thing that's been hugely beneficial within ASUG is to involve a lot of people in the innovation cycle. So at the ideation stage, bring a lot of people into it and put some mechanics around it so that it's fun. It may not necessarily be a monetary incentive, but some type of incentive to be, that creates recognition for your participation and creativity, that comes up with something that can be actionable. And I think that people continue to take things to the next level when they know that they're part of the entire process. Because if you just keep giving them task, that's great, but good luck constantly connecting each time. And so obviously people love their own ideas. And if you get people in an environment where innovation is really a core tenet of your organization, and people buy into the part that I'm now a key contributor to this core tenet, then great ideas not only come out of that, but they come out of it consistently because it's something that you do regularly, and you keep coming up with new ways to delight your customer. And of course, high excelling teams always come up with great ways to execute on great plans like that. So I think it's a great way to marry together the need to be innovative with the need to keep your team highly competitive and performing.
No, I think it's interesting in sport. Your competitor is often right there every day, game time. You're looking at your competition. You're looking at what they're doing. In business, it's often not that cut and dry. Your competitor's not usually sitting across the table from you. And I think it's really important to kind of keep your team aware of, hey, you know what? SAP, we are the leader in business intelligence, but let's look at what the other competitors are doing. What are the things that they're doing to catch us? What are the things that they're driving? What are their messages? And keeping the team sharp and focused. That, at SAP, certainly we can spend a lot of time talking to people internally, but that's not necessarily our benchmark, right? Our benchmark needs to be market excellence and really keeping that hunger and that competitive spirit inside the team, that we're always looking at what are the new and innovative things coming from elsewhere, and how can we either incorporate or better what the competition is doing.
Yeah, and I would just add that people want to be challenged and they want to win, at least the people that I think you want on your team. So, from a leadership standpoint, it's constantly up to you to set the bar, right, and to raise that bar when you do meet those different, whether it's project related. We have very specific key metrics that we look at on the operations side, and we're constantly incrementally improving those metrics so the team can find the next level of success. So I think it's very important to measure your success and then raise the bar.
Well, to sort of sum up here, and we'll send you on your way, really it's important to create a culture in which people can receive the criticism that they need to grow, and to create a culture in which they feel calm to do their jobs, set expectations, and these are the keys to really putting together a winning team. So thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you for joining us for this hour and a half.
Thank you, guys.